Today, I'm helping you decide whether or not to go wireless for your gaming setup. With everything wireless getting faster, you begin to wonder if it even makes sense to stick with wired. By the end of this video, you'll know which side is right for you. Today, we'll be covering 4 areas that can be wireless or wired, which are mouse, headphones, keyboard, and controllers. I'm going to be going through pros and cons of wireless and wired in each category. So first up, we have wireless mouse. The first pro of a wireless mouse is that you have no cord that pulls when you're using your mouse and you don't feel like you're dragging something. Another pro of a wireless mouse is that the PC can be anywhere. It can be in the corner of your room for all the mouse cares. Because it's wireless, you're not limited on where you can put your PC. I can actually personally attest to that. I had to change my setup and get a new mouse because of where I had my PC, which I ended up changing anyways. Next pro is that it's portable. It's a smaller form factor and you can take it anywhere. And if you have a laptop and you just don't like the little tracking pad, you have the mouse that you can take with you. A lot easier to take than a wired one. And last pro is aesthetics. It just looks better, honestly, but its pros can't come without cons. First con for the wireless mouse is that it needs to charge or you need to get a new battery. There's mice that need to be charged, but when you plug it in, you can actually still use it, unlike some companies. Just don't waste your money on the Apple mouse that you can't use while it's plugged up. Next con is if you get a cheap one because you're trying to save money, it could be stuttery. Basically, when you go to use it, it could feel like it stutters just a second, like a quick second, and it just throws you off a little bit. That would be a cause for concern if you had that. And lastly, if it happens to fall, there's no cord to save it. It's just at the mercy of gravity and whatever your floor is made out of. Now let's move on to the pros of a wired mouse. And first up, it's less likely to stutter. Since your mouse is plugged in, there's a slim to none chance that your mouse is going to stutter. The only reason it might is if your cable's messed up or your USB port's messed up. Second pro is that it's usually cheaper. If you go for the cheaper option, unlike the wireless mouse, it doesn't mean that it's a higher likely chance to stutter. And last pro is that it's durable. They're usually made a little bit better and higher quality than wireless mice, so it could last you a lot longer. Now let's move on to wired cons. The first con is that you're limited by the cable. You have to set your PC somewhere specific that it reaches. You need to make sure you have enough slack so you don't have to worry about dragging and pulling the cable while you're using it. Second con is that you're limited for travel. If you try to take it out with you, it's just a lot more to worry about. Cable to untangle and a lot of excess wire if you're connecting it to your laptop out in public. It's just a lot more hassle than a wireless one would be. And last con for the wired mouse is a feel of dragging. When you're using it, it could feel like the weight is a little pulled forward, or when you're pulling it back, you feel the cable pull with it, so it could throw you off a little bit. It's likely that you'll get used to this, but it also is something to be aware of. It's going to be a constant feel type of thing. And so who's our winner for the first category? It's the wireless mouse. Reason being is that it has all the pros of being wireless, and some can actually double as a wired mouse if you prefer that. You get the best of both worlds, honestly. Next, let's move on to headphones. First up, we have wireless. First pro is that you can walk away. You're not going to walk away and have something like this happen to you. And second and last pro is that it's just a clean looking setup. It just looks better. When you have them on, you don't have a wire just connecting you to your computer and it looks a little goofy thing. That's just me nitpicking. Now let's move on to wireless cons. The first thing is audio quality. Typically when it's connected through Bluetooth, it's just not going to be as good as wired. Some headphones are, they're about equal. It's not really a big difference. If you're into music and like the fine details of that and audio, then go for wireless. Second con for wireless headphones is that some headphones just don't have built-in mics when they're wireless. They're just for listening purposes. If you want one with a mic, you're going to have to specifically make sure that it has one. Then the last con of wireless headphones is that it can turn off or disconnect and it won't pause the audio of what you were just watching, but you shouldn't have to worry about that. You're usually not watching anything bad, right? Now let's move on to the pros of wired headphones. First things first is audio quality. It's just going to sound better. I don't know what specifically the deepest deeps and the highest highs or frequencies. I don't know any of that. I just know It sounds better in my ears when my headphones are connected than Bluetooth connected. Second pro of wired headphones is low latency. When you're listening to music or playing a game, there's a higher chance that it's just going to be on cue and won't delay, unlike wireless. Not all wireless do that. Most of them are pretty good, but some might. Last pro of wired headphones is that there's cheaper options out there. Typically, headphones being wireless is a selling point to make it cost more because of Bluetooth and connection and being able to wirelessly connect to things. So wired or can typically be cheaper. Now let's move on to the cons of wired headphones. First things first, need I say more? Second con is tangling wires. We all know that moment when it's just you're trying to get it all undone and you're just shaking violently the cables hoping it comes out one day, and then finally they're still tangled. That's just obnoxious to deal with. That's a nitpicking con, but it's still a con. And last con is if you're not careful and you trip on the wire, it could damage the wire and mess it up audio wise. You mess up the headphones in general and you'd be SOL. Now the winner for this category is wired headphones. The reason being is that it just sounds better, it's more versatile, it can connect to basically anything, and you can find options that can double up as wireless headphones too. Our next category is keyboards. Let's start with the pros of wireless keyboards, and it's less clutter. You don't have to worry about a cable again. You don't have to worry about tangling it up, cable managing it, and worrying about where it's going to filter through. Okay, it just looks better. Last pro is that you can place it anywhere. You can have it in your lap. You could sit 10 feet away with a wireless one and just use it back there if you got a big ass screen that you're going to use it on. Next, let's move on to the cons of wireless keyboard, and it's that it needs to be charged. With all things wireless, obviously they either need to be charged or get new batteries, but the fact that you have to do that can almost make it as if it's still wired. And that moves us on to our next point, which is if you have it plugged in all the time so that it doesn't die on you, basically like having a wired keyboard. And the last con is there's a chance of it dying mid gaming session or as soon as you get on and you're like, oh fuck, I gotta plug it in. But it's nothing big. It's a few seconds to get it changed out, but it is a bit of an inconvenience. Next, let's move on to the pros of a wired keyboard. First things first, stable connection. With it being wired up, there's not really a chance of it having interference with other things, so you don't have to worry about that. And next pro is that it's just cheaper. Wired keyboards could be a good option if you're on a budget and you want to save some money, so that's something to consider. Now let's move on to the cons of wired keyboard. Cable management. Like I said before, you're limited by the cord it gives you. If it's not long enough, then oh well, you got to look for something else. Now the winner of this category is wireless. Even though I had more cons to say about wireless than wired, I still think it's the better option because if you want a wired keyboard, why not just get a wireless one so that you have the option to make it wireless? Just make sure that it can be wired up and connected. And our last category is controller. Now the first pro of a wireless controller is that you can do this without having to worry about slinging your PlayStation or whatever you're using across the room with it. The second pro is that you can just sit back and relax. If you have whatever you're using connected to a TV, whether it be PlayStation or Xbox, you can sit on the couch, relax, and play your game. Next, let's move on to the cons of wireless controllers. First things first is that it needs to charge, whether it be get new batteries or actually charge it. It's not that hard to keep up with, just charge it when you're not using it, but some people still find that a little hard. Next con is the price. They're not cheap. $60, $70 for a controller. That's a bit high in my opinion. So it'd always be a better option to, if you get it, take care of it. It should last. And the last con, it kind of ties into the controller lasting, is the battery life. Batteries deteriorate. PlayStation specifically, you don't just exchange out batteries like you do Xbox. You get new batteries, fresh new batteries, so you're not really worried about that too much. PlayStation, on the other hand, if your battery life deteriorates, you either have to take it apart, screws and everything, have a new battery and place it in, or just buy a new one, which most people end up buying a new one. And that's another $60, $70. Now let's move on to the pros of wired controllers. First things first is price. Usually you can get them cheaper, but soon we'll discover why that's not always the best thing. And last pro is that it has a stable connection. So there's not really a chance of something interfering with it. But nowadays, with PS5 controllers and Xbox controllers, there's not really interference. You're not really going to see that. First con with wired controllers is that you can't walk away from it and you can't throw the controller without slinging across your console with it. Second con is that there's no features specifically PS5. If it's not first party controller and it's wired like this one, then you're not going to get the adaptive triggers and the rumbling like in Sony's DualSense Shock. And last con is not a lot of options. I'm mainly thinking PS5. I don't know about Xbox too well, but I know that there's options like this. And you don't want that. I don't want that. And the winner for that category is wireless. Just clear cutthroat wireless is just so much better. The wired options you do have can double as wireless. So I'm thinking the DualSense Edge for PS5 specifically, but that's like $200 something. In short, wireless is just better overall in most of these categories. The reasons are that they're just more flexible. You can do more with them. These devices can also usually do both. They can do wired and wireless. And it just looks better for your setups. Overall, it just makes the whole thing kind of come together and look better. If your setup has a bunch of wireless things, it is more prone to have interference, but I have a bunch of wireless things at my house and I don't see any interference. So I don't see it affect it that much. But if it does for you, wired would make more sense. Thank you for watching. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.